The HOA tried to slap a $900 rainwater tax on Sam's legal water tanks. Their smug president claimed he was diverting public moisture and threatened a lien. But Sam had a powerful ally at the State Water Authority, and the investigation hit hard. Just wait until you see how the HOA crumbled and why justice poured down like rain. When Samuel Greer finally hung up his ranger hat after 32 years with the U.S. Forest Service, he didn't chase golf courses or cruise ships. He wanted clean air, quiet nights, and the satisfaction of growing his own food. He'd spent his life protecting public lands. Now, he just wanted to take care of his own. So he found it. A modest cabin with a view of the Dragoon Mountains, tucked at the far edge of a small, supposedly eco-friendly HOA community in rural Arizona. The lot had good soil, open sun, and the perfect slope for water harvesting. With a modest pension and savings, Sam installed a full rainwater catchment system, approved by state environmental officials and built by licensed contractors. 2 underground tanks, sand filtration, a UV purifier, and runoff barriers to prevent erosion. For Sam, the setup wasn't luxury. It was common sense. A lifetime ranger's logic. No waste, no fuss. And for 2 months, it worked perfectly. Until one warm afternoon in May, he opened his mailbox and found a crisp, cream-colored envelope stamped with the HOA seal. Inside was a single-page letter, the tone oddly formal for a neighborhood announcement. As of this quarter, the HOA has implemented a surface collection tax of $900/year to promote fairness in communal water distribution, per the new water usage equalization rule. Payment is due within 30 days. Sam stood still, rereading the letter twice, then a third time. Equalization rule? Tax for what? He hadn't tapped into any shared system. His tanks were entirely off-grid, fully permitted under Arizona's water independence statutes. He flipped through his binder of purchase documents, environmental permits, and the HOA's original covenants and bylaws. Not a single mention of any surface collection tax. No proposed amendment. No community vote. It made no sense. And so, for a moment, he laughed. The kind of quick, uneasy chuckle that comes when something's too absurd to take seriously. But the laugh didn't last long, because 10 days later another envelope arrived. This one marked second notice. The amount had grown to $1,075, citing administrative late fees and warning of a potential lien if payment was not made within 15 business days. The letter ended with a line in bold. Failure to comply may result in legal proceedings and property encumbrance. Sam felt a cold weight settle in his chest. This wasn't a clerical error. This was coordinated. They'd drawn up a fake policy, mailed out a fake tax, and now were threatening him with real consequences. And just like that, his peaceful corner of the desert, his long-awaited reward for a life of service, no longer felt like home. It felt like a trap, an expensive, paper-wrapped ambush. The HOA president, Owen Markley, had been elected just 6 weeks prior, a fresh face with glossy flyers, rooftop solar panels, and slogans about communal balance and green integrity. On paper, he looked like a champion of progress. In practice, he was something else entirely. Sam had watched from a distance as Owen took over the neighborhood newsletter, rewrote language in the HOA website, and chaired every committee from landscaping to compliance. He spoke in buzzwords, talked about resource equity and hydrological fairness. But what became obvious, very quickly, was that Owen wasn't interested in conservation. He was interested in control, especially over people like Sam, newcomers with independent systems and no interest in micromanagement. So when Sam received that second notice with late fees and lien threats, he did what any reasonable person would do. He gathered every document he had, installation invoices, state-approved permits, water conservation certificates, Arizona rain harvesting exemptions, and HOA bylaws signed at closing. He printed copies, tabbed the pages, and showed up to the monthly HOA meeting prepared to explain. The meeting was held in the rec hall, folding chairs lined up under humming fluorescent lights. There were about 20 residents present. Some of them smiled politely when Sam walked in. Others just looked bored. Owen sat at the front table in a monogrammed polo shirt, flanked by 2 board members and a plate of sugar-free cookies. When it was Sam's turn to speak, he stood and calmly laid out his case. He showed the exemptions, cited Arizona Revised Statute 45, 312, mentioned that his system was not connected to any municipal source, and therefore could not be taxed under any HOA jurisdiction without a legally ratified amendment, which this clearly was not. He had barely reached page 2 when Owen held up a hand. "Mr. Greer," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but let me remind you, that's state code. This is our community. We supersede that. You're diverting public moisture." The room went quiet. Public moisture? Sam blinked. He looked around, expecting anyone, to laugh or question it, or at least show confusion, but the board members simply nodded, stone-faced, as if the term had been written in stone by the founding fathers. Sam opened his mouth to respond, but Owen cut him off again. "We can't make exceptions for every backyard experiment. You want to store that much rainfall? Maybe you can get your tomatoes certified as a reservoir." A few light chuckles scattered through the room. Not many, but enough to sting. Sam closed his folder without another word. He felt the heat rising behind his collar, a tightness in his jaw he hadn't felt in years. Not since fire season meetings with budget-slashing bureaucrats who never left their air-conditioned offices. Only this time, he wasn't on duty. He was the target. He walked out before the meeting adjourned. Outside, the desert wind had picked up, rustling the mesquite. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the hills. Normally, it was his favorite time of day, but now, all he could see was red. This wasn't just about water anymore. It was about principle and humiliation, and Owen Markley had just made it personal. Sam didn't sleep much after that meeting. He kept replaying Owen's smirk in his mind, the condescension, the complete disregard for the law, and worst of all, the way some of the board had nodded along like it all made perfect sense. By the next morning, he was seated at his kitchen table with a pot of black coffee and a growing stack of legal printouts. For 3 days straight, he combed through water rights statutes, HOA regulations, environmental codes, and precedent cases. What he found confirmed what he already suspected. His system wasn't just compliant, it was protected under multiple state-level conservation incentives. And what Owen had done? That wasn't creative policy. That was unlawful taxation. That's when Sam picked up the phone and called Claire Navarro. Claire had been his partner back in the wildfire division 15 years ago. These days, she worked as a compliance officer with the Arizona State Water Authority. Sharp, relentless, and allergic to bureaucratic nonsense. Claire was the kind of person who didn't just read fine print, she enforced it. He explained everything, the tank system, the fake equalization rule, the lien threats. There was a pause on the other end. Then her voice turned ice cold. "That's blatantly illegal. HOA boards can't tax state-recognized conservation systems, especially not without a formal vote, a filed amendment, and state disclosure. You gave them written notice of the exemption?" "I did." "Good," she said. "That's all I need." Within 72 hours, Claire's department launched a formal inquiry. The cease and desist letter hit the HOA's inbox by the end of the week. It outlined 5 violations: unauthorized levies, misuse of enforcement threats, obstruction of protected infrastructure, failure to disclose financial amendments, and non-compliance with state water use policy. But it didn't stop there. When the investigation dug into the HOA's financials, they discovered something worse. The surface collection tax wasn't a community decision. It was a personal maneuver. A forensic auditor linked the revenue from that fake tax to a discretionary reserve fund, one that had been quietly ballooning over the past 3 months. The spending? Decorative landscaping upgrades for Owen's executive walkway, including rare palms, imported stonework, and even motion sensor lighting. It wasn't conservation, it was cover. Sam sat at his desk, reviewing the report with a quiet kind of fury. He wasn't just looking at an abuse of power. He was looking at theft wrapped in jargon disguised as fairness. So he went further. With Claire's help, he filed a formal complaint with the county assessor's office, requesting immediate review of the HOA's tax-related actions. Then, he sent a case packet to the Arizona Attorney General's office, Rural Abuse Division, detailing the scheme, the threats, and the financial manipulation. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam doors. But inside, the fire was lit. And this time, he wasn't just fighting for his own water. He was fighting for every neighbor who'd paid the fee and stayed quiet. The consequences came slower than Sam had hoped, but they came. 4 weeks after the investigation began, thick envelopes began arriving in mailboxes across the HOA. Each one bore the official seal of the Arizona State Water Authority and contained a certified refund notice. Every resident who had paid the so-called surface collection tax received their full payment back, with interest, itemized by the day. For some, it was a modest check. For others, it was nearly $1,000 returned, plus a formal apology from the Compliance Division. At the bottom of each letter was a simple statement. This fee was levied in violation of State Conservation Code and is not enforceable by any private community authority. It didn't take long for word to spread. The HOA's legal counsel, who had originally co-signed the compliance memo backing the policy, issued a brief public statement announcing his withdrawal from representation, citing ethical concerns. He resigned that same day. No farewell message, no follow-up. But the moment that truly changed the atmosphere came 2 days later, when Owen Markley himself called a mandatory emergency meeting in the community hall. The room was packed, standing room only. Sam stood near the back, arms folded, quiet. Owen looked different now. The charm was gone, the confidence cracked. His collar was tight, his palms visibly sweaty as he stepped up to the microphone. Per findings from the State Water Authority, he began, voice thin, the board is being placed under provisional oversight while administrative inconsistencies are addressed. I will be stepping down as president, effective immediately. The room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. And then the whole hall filled with the kind of applause that doesn't celebrate. It relieves. There were no speeches, no outbursts, just a quiet wave of satisfaction moving through a neighborhood that had, for a moment, forgotten it had a voice. As for Sam, he didn't linger after the vote. He nodded to a few neighbors, tipped his hat, and walked back to his property. The sun was starting to set, casting a warm glow across his tomato patch. The tanks hummed quietly in the soil, drawing no attention, demanding no approval. He grabbed the watering can out of habit, even though the irrigation system was automatic. The air smelled of sage and dust and justice. And when a neighbor strolled past the fence and called out, "Sam, how on earth did you win that fight?" He just smiled, turned back to what were his rows, and said, "Turns out public moisture doesn't stand a chance against state law.